All good. So look, this afternoon we've got a panel session. I'm not going to say too much more. I'm going to hand it over to Shereya to do the intros, and she'll be facilitating the session. And we're probably going to have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. So listen to the session or grab some question Q&A at the end.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be the host of today's session, and we're going to be talking about confronting asset and equipment data challenges head-on. Today, we're going to be tackling two key issues that face many of our organisations around data quality and data integration, and also the skill gap in data analytics. I'm suspecting everyone here likes data, so I'm going to kick off with a bit of a data insight. There's been studies that reveal almost up to 2/3 of enterprise data actually goes unused. And linking back to what Drew mentioned before, we're quite we have a lot of data, but not enough insights. So I guess you can imagine what that means. So much of our data is not getting used, which means that's going to be leading to missed opportunities, inefficiencies in our business, poor decisions that actually impact our overall businesses. But on the flip side, that actually prevents a huge opportunity for us to untap. And today's panel session from various industries are going to be discussing all about the strategies they've employed to improve data quality and integration, and how they've addressed the skill gap in data analytics. We're going to have an insightful discussion with our panel, and we're going to kick off. I'd like to introduce firstly David Kelly from Qantas, who, like many people attending mainstream today, evolved from a hands-on role fixing broken things and then moved into management, focusing on fixing systems and processes. David, can you share a fun fact about yourself?
Yeah, sure. How many males have been to the urinal at the other end? This is going to be okay. How many have been there? How many urinals are in there? Anyone count them? A lot? Does anyone wonder which ones are the most frequently used and not used? That was my question I was thinking there before. What is something interesting I could say? And it's that engineering brain looking for small problems, looking for small details. And you use it across a whole lot of different processes. You know, and even just here, you go, I wonder what maintenance would they use on the N1 versus is it the number 1, 2, or 3 that gives you the most frequent? Anyway, I'm a bit strange.
That's a really interesting fun fact about yourself, David. I'm sure many of us think about that. I'd love to introduce Danny White from BHP, whose passion for tactical problem solving as a site-based engineer involved into managing data analytics team on a global scale, creating visibility to make informed business-led strategic decisions. Danny, can you share something that not many people know about you?
That's okay.
Oh, sorry, David. Something not many people know about me. Unlike David's affinity to urinals, I was actually invited to participate when I was in high school in the Australian Maths Olympiad. So very nerdy, and you might be able to see some associations with what I talk about today, how this comes through. But like David, it actually wasn't about pure maths at all. It was all about problem solving. And I didn't actually realise back then that's what would, spur me on to pursue a career in engineering. But I just loved the fact that every single time I didn't get the problem right, I was one step closer to figuring out what the problem was, solution was actually going to be. So once I realised that, I could actually sit there for 12 hours and not get the answer and find enjoyment in that, I knew engineering was going to be for me.
The perfect discipline. Awesome. I'm going to kick off with the first question to our panellists. Could you please share a project that you've worked on where you face data quality or integration issues, and how did you address these? I'll kick off with David.
I actually just spoke about in a previous panel about an electronic logbook. As a system, we traditionally have paper entries in the aviation industry for when the pilots report a defect. So we have the variability that goes on with, is it number one, is it the left, is it the IDG number two? They put in different things as well as spell check and spelling mistakes. So we have all these different acronyms. Then the way the engineer writes them off is inconsistent as well. So one of the things that we did now is we tried to actually create an electronic logbook and create all the messages and put all the data that they would commonly use in a drop-down field. So as they start to type it, we're using Apple pretext. It pops up and they just select it and then they add the other information. With that, we're starting to get really consistent data coming in. It's pretty simple. We're using a tool that they've got available. We also then, in our maintenance information system, if they replace a part, it's always in the same field. So you can start to extract that out. You see the part number and field, you know something got replaced. So you're using a couple of intelligent ways of trying to take away that variability. And then we tried to then extend that into the cabin crew members. So as they report a seat defect, a recline, a dirty seat, a seatbelt missing, your IFE system not working between here and Sydney, which would be very painful, you know, we can actually see that and actually then try and do something about it in advance. So trying to create the data coming in easier to actually consume.
I'll set a bit of context first. The team that I currently manage at BHP looks after maintenance data globally. So as you can imagine, with how big we are, we have a lot of different commodities as well. Integration of our data is a BAU issue for us. Kerry's in my team here at the front today, and she knows every single time we do monthly reporting, we find problems. So for us, big issue. I'll start with integration. Some of the challenges we face on a regular basis, inconsistent formats. David just touched on the exact same thing. You'd be surprised how different, and I'm sure everyone here, right? Your data, your downtime analysis systems, all been set up differently. And the way that they report something as simple as a timestamp, you know, who would have thought that there could be 30 different ways you could actually report a timestamp, but that absolutely does happen. Fleet management systems, if you're using MindStar, Modular, whatever it may be, integrating all of those can be extremely difficult. Even whatever, you know, CMMS you're using, if it's Maximo, SAP, whatever it may be. So a few of the issues: inconsistent data formats, duplicate records, missing or incomplete data, and another one that everyone forgets about too, data latency. So the frequency upon which all of your data updates. And when it's different, it causes a lot of headaches. Sometimes you're looking at this week, sometimes it's last week, it's next month, it's over here, there, everywhere. So one of the ways that we have tried to simplify the way we integrate our data is by making sure we have appropriate standards in place for when we need to actually ingest something new. And that might sound trivial, but how many people here today actually have data standards in their organisation? 4? Oh, there's a few. That's good. How detailed are they? Quite detailed? Not really? So-so? It's good though. It's a step in the right. Thick, too much. That can also be a problem. If you don't have it, I would recommend seriously thinking about it. Every single time then you're ingesting a new piece of data. For us, we acquire new assets. You may know about some of those recently. And it's really important for us that we integrate it in the same way every single time. We use the same nomenclature so that we can speed things up down the track. So now we have automated pipelines, if you don't already. Every single time that we have something new that comes in that doesn't actually fit in with the rules we've set up, it can tell us, and then we go away and fix it. We add a new rule, and away we go. It's all automated. So super, super important. At a high level, what does it allow us to do? Data profile. So if you're not data profiling at the moment, would strongly recommend from an integration perspective that that's something you go away and have a look at to speed things up.
I'll just going back about the data integrity. Trying to make it easy for the people putting it in is actually really important. And that's actually with that, you know, iPad form for cabin crew and tech crew, it's actually no harder for them. It's actually quicker and easier. But we're getting structured data. And if you can somehow do that in a simple way, to then feed the data across. And that might be a solution you can start with and then interface it in. It can be a part of that journey that you're not trying to fix it after the event. Fixing after the event takes a lot of effort if you're trying to recode things. If you're not trying to recode it and you don't care, then just put natural language processing on the other end to help you identify the problem, and then just leave the data where it is.
Really interesting. Building on data quality side, I know there's a lot of discussion around data quality and how we should really start with the fundamentals and improve the quality of our data. Can you share any insights where you guys have made changes in your data quality and how you went about doing that and improving data quality?
Is that one first?
I can, if you like. Yes, data quality. So if you went earlier to Melinda's session, everyone was probably there. She spoke about this too, how important it is to get the back end right. At the end of the day, everything we do after that point relies on data quality. And unfortunately for us, it's not exactly the most attractive thing that is easily recognised by senior leaders and companies as value adding. So for us, we came up with this idea of data products. So unlike David, that works a lot more in the operational space, the data that we deal with is a little bit more strategic. So at quite a high level, we're looking at equipment performance, financials, work management process. And to improve the data quality in each of those domains, we've actually come up with this data product idea. So there's a framework, and in that framework, there's a series of things. The very first one, use cases. So in the world of data we have now, where there's so much of it, it's really important that we're focusing our efforts on what actually really matters. So by defining all of your use cases for your data, it means that you can focus in on getting that data as accurate as possible, the stuff you're actually going to use, and not worry about everything else. So that's an important part of our data product. Another one, testing. There's so many programs out there, you don't even need to develop it yourself. Whatever you want to use, Monte Carlo or the like, it will tell you when there's issues with your data. So instead of having to find out on the front end, when your Power BI updates and you look at it and you go, that's rubbish, there's no way that happened. You can use these programs, set up some testing rules, and it'll actually flag to you when something's wrong. So we've done that as well. Compliance testing is in there, and change logs too, so that we can make sure that we're actually tracking when we make a change that might have some sort of adverse impact down the track. We know exactly what we did. All of those things are helping us to improve the quality of our data in our domains that we've split up. That's another thing I would say too. Data is a beast, and when you break it down into smaller areas like that and assign a single point of accountability, which we're all quite familiar with in the maintenance world, it makes it a lot easier to actually hold people to account with that data quality.
Thanks. I think segmentation of business units drives a lot of problems around data quality, because sometimes it's not in someone's interest to spend the time fixing it. So examples we see, operational, we have a task in the system, it's known, it's got 4 hours against the task. It always takes 8 hours to do the task. Everyone then starts going, this is ridiculous, you argue about it. Or inversely, it only takes 2 hours, but we allow 4 hours. The business unit that owns the task cards has it. They don't actually do the execution. The execution aren't bothered to go back and actually adjust the time. So you end up with this to and fro going on. Same with spare parts. We have a list of spare parts against a task. Did you use them all? So to actually get better at it, you need a cross-functional analytics team that actually isn't owned by anyone. We tend to be all working in silo mentality, reporting your KPIs of your business unit. And it takes a bit of a leadership thought process to go, you know what? To improve our business holistically, we need to create this team that can actually do that processing, are enabled to go researching for all the business units, but actually working it in a different way.
If anyone hasn't ever heard of Jeff Winter, I would encourage everyone to go away and research him and read his articles afterwards. Guy's brilliant. And one of his quotes around silos of data that I really love is, when your data is sleeping in silos, it dreams fragmentedly. But it's exactly that, absolutely. In order to improve your data quality, it's not just about looking at it in one domain. It's about how you can integrate it so you can improve it holistically, for sure. But yeah, would encourage, go read some of Jeff's work. Very good.
Yeah, I might build on that question around what you're doing, Danny, around actually figuring out what data you need and who's going to own that sort of data. How do you balance what gets mandated, so like a mandatory field versus not something that's not mandated in terms of like accuracy as well? So if you mandate something, you know, you have to fill it in, which means you can actually lose your data quality sometimes. So how do you kind of manage that piece?
I know everyone's a bit scared of AI, and we were talking about it earlier too, and people at the moment are going for a lot of big shiny things that it can solve for, when really this is the sort of stuff that it could be solving for on a really low level, taking out that human aspect of data capture. And even just like the drop downs and things like that David was talking about, right? But artificial intelligence can do that too. So yeah, would encourage everyone, if you have humans interfacing with data at all, how do you improve that data culture so that you can improve data quality? And sometimes that is removing the human, and sometimes it is empowering them to actually know the value of that data to make sure they get it right the first time. So when you are mandating things, like you must populate this field in your downtime analysis system that tells you exactly what happened, they have an invested interest to do it correctly the first time. And the way that we can do that is actually by providing some of the analytical tools that we develop, perhaps at a higher level in the organisation, to those people to make their lives easier and better. Because you can imagine when you're interfacing with a system that's going to spit something out and potentially help you with your job later on, whether it's, you know, picking something up in a planned fashion so that you don't have to fix it on a breakdown when it's 40 degrees and you're in a chute and it's 100% humidity in Port Hedland and you're over it. When they start feeling the impacts of that data, they're actually more inclined to make sure when they're interfacing with it, they do the right thing. And they get it as accurate as they possibly can. Because they know otherwise it's going to spit something out that's rubbish on the front end and not use it anyway.
For some of the really critical fields for us, we're quite lucky. We invested in a major project 12 years ago for a maintenance information system upgrade that moved from green screen to a more modern one. Some of those fields we can make mandatory, so they have to be filled in. So our compliance fields are really important. For parts removal, where it's highly legislated, our industry, so you need to know the parts. We use electronic sign-off, so the part has to be known and it's inducted in the system for that configuration and that position before you can electronically sign it off. So that's great, that works really well. But when you've got the people writing some of the stuff in as well, you've got to try and find a with them. So can you help them anyway? Bizarrely, one of the things one of the guys did is he created a Google Better Maintenance, and it's actually a Google add-in that went over the top of Google, over the MXI screen. It had drop-downs in all the particular bits, so he could actually identify where things were broken with these drop-downs. The IT guys hated it, but what it showed was actually helping the engineer created ways of actually doing things better. You know, and if you've got a system that's inside your network, you may be able to do that to help them. You know, it's all about that with them. What's in it for me? If you make it easy for someone, they'll make it easy for you. Hopefully.
9 times out of 10.
Thank you. Can you share a project where data analytics led to significant improvements in maintenance and reliability outcomes?
Yeah, for sure. A really simple example of combined data was, I mentioned in the previous talk about the Skywise product, and the first tool we did in that was actually create this spare parts view for different locations. So it was between the Qantas, it was between Jetstar, between Qantas Link. So we had a window change in Sydney on a 787, and the only sealant that we had sitting was in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a major maintenance base for us, 787s. It would have been a 24-hour delay, loss of availability while we were waiting for that one tube of sealant to come back. By selecting across Jetstar, they didn't have it. They fly 787s, you'd expect it to be there. Bizarrely, the guy then selected in Qantas Link, and we had 7 tubes sitting 100 metres away. We actually protected and actually saved that service and the return service as well by just actually combining and looking at data in a different way. Something you wouldn't expect to be there gave us an insight, and we've used that multiple times, that one spare parts tool, to actually share information quite simply.
Did anyone come in here earlier for a talk on maintenance debt at all? A few people. One of the things, now we're still on this journey, it's not completely delivering the value yet, but it's relatively simple, right, to quantify maintenance debt. We all know what it is. We defer things, and then we need to do it later on. Maintenance doesn't just disappear, it gets deferred. So we know how much that maintenance would have cost us, and we therefore know how much money we've pushed into the future that we still need to spend, in addition to the demand that's also in the future. So the first part of what we did was obviously just visualise what that maintenance debt is, so that we know the risk we're carrying. But obviously, if you go to a senior executive and you say, oh, you know, got $40 million next year, I need another $10 million because that's my maintenance debt that I'm carrying from the previous year, they'll probably look at that and go, oh, well, you've got $40 million, you'll sort it out, right? You'll make it work. It'll be fine. And that's what we currently have a challenge around is it's easy to quantify what our maintenance debt is, but it's really hard to actually know whether or not we need to do something about it and what we need to do about it, outside of cash, that is. So we've quantified what our maintenance debt is. This is at a global level right now. And the next step, obviously, is maintenance debt isn't a massive concern to us, right? We do inspections and we find things that are broken and then we go ahead and fix it. But how do we know we can fix it? That's the part that we wanted to answer, the serviceability of the debt. Debt is only a concern if you can't service it in the future. And yeah, there's a cash aspect to that, of course. You have to pay for components, so you need the money to be able to do that. But there's also a people aspect. So on a dynamic basis, if I'm a maintenance manager and I know that I'm carrying a certain amount of debt, it'd be really insightful for me to know in the next 3, 6, 12 months, how am I going to clear that debt? And I clear that debt through people. So in the next 3 months, if I'm going to claw back some of this debt, how many more people would it take me? How many more labour hours? What do I actually need to do? And if you saw that you needed an extra 60 people to execute not only the maintenance debt that you've got that's serious, but also your future demand, it's probably going to be a bit concerning, right? Where am I going to pluck? I mean, we're struggling to get maintainers to do the work we need to do right now, and then I've gone and accumulated all this debt. Now I need another 60 people. Where am I going to get the 60 people from? So what we're doing at the moment is actually trying to do that translation of something that seems rather, trivial into something that makes sense for the people that can actually action it. And what we've found too is on those time horizons, 3 to 6, 12 months onwards, we see these peaks and troughs because we naturally push out a lot of maintenance to the next financial year or just after Christmas. And by providing that visibility to the business in a way that people can actually understand and interface with the data, maintenance manager, you need 20 people, you need 30 people, you need 60 people extra in the next 3 months. It actually allows them to action it. Because right now, we just chuck money in a budget the next year, yeah, we'll get to it. But by then, we could have accumulated debt to a point that it actually starts impacting the reliability of our assets. So that's just one way at the moment that we're trying to help the business make the right decisions when it comes to dealing with their maintenance debt. And if it's not serviceable, we can action it, right? What can we and not do? What do we need another shut for? Whatever it may be, we can actually start actioning it.
A funny thing on maintenance debt for us is we know what we need is highly regulated. You've got that all the time, you've got the hours, the cycles, everything. The debt that starts to accumulate a lot of time is all the condition. How does it look? And that actually affects passengers, and that's hard to quantify as well. You get on board a Qantas aircraft, one of the old ones, and you're going, geez, you guys don't maintain this aircraft. Or when the 330s first came out, the televisions kept on breaking, the in-flight video. And everyone goes, this aircraft, the tellies don't work. You expect everything else to be completely functional, but the thing that you interact with actually drops NPS scores. One headrest is broken. You tell 6 people how bad it is, but no one actually tells everyone that headrest was great because it's irrelevant. You expect that. So you actually we can drag down our business by not servicing the things that people see. And it's quite important, and it's bizarre because a lot of it's not built into the design of maintenance. It's as they break, as they get worn.
And it's always the thing that gets deferred, right? You know, when we don't have cash, those are the sorts of things that are deferred. And that's what we often see too, is also being able to provide senior leaders in the organisation who are pushing those KPIs that are to cut costs or perhaps cut a shutdown, whatever it may be. What that's actually going to do in terms of real numbers, not just dollars numbers, people numbers, in the near future. Because sometimes to a senior executive pushing an $8 million shut, oh, you know, it'll be fine, we'll pick it up next year. But when you say that, you know, that means you now need an extra 100 people, 200 people on your shut, and you've already maximised capacity in your camps, you know, when it's FIFO workforce, that's a big deal. You actually can't deal with that. All of a sudden it goes from being a dollars and a numbers game to like physically impossible.
Yeah, and the knock-on effect. How do you balance the need for advanced analytics with practical limitations in your business?
It's completely difficult around that. I don't think we have a good solution. I know what we want to do. I think a lot of us know what we want to do, but a lot of people actually don't want to learn. So we have a really good platform. It's got a really good learning platform in, but people default to Excel for some of the people. And that's just easy, it's known, they'll build macros upon macros, they make this fantastic stuff. And some of the solutions we want, you can't buy, so we have to build. Then you're fighting with the IT to come up with a design that they actually don't want to fund because they're not interested. So I think it's actually a real struggle, to be honest, you know, it's difficult in that process. I wish it was simpler, but no.
And we almost have the opposite situation playing out in that we're overly ambitious with advanced data analytics and what we can apply it to, and we think we can apply it to everything and, you know, solve all of the maintenance problems with it. But so for us, it's really about two things, I think. So aligning data initiatives with business value. We get asked to do lots of random things all the time, and don't get me wrong, you can. You know, data can solve a lot of problems, but just because we can doesn't mean we should, right? So for us, it's really about making sure that the things we do take on align directly with business goals and generating value. So yeah, high impact use cases. Also, if you're not super familiar with data analytics, there is generally a chain of things that you go through before you even get to predictive and prescriptive. So you start with descriptive analysis, you'll go into diagnostic, and then you'll go to your predictive and then prescriptive. And quite often you can actually solve a lot of your problems in the early phases without boiling the ocean. But for some reason we have this obsession with jumping straight to predictive these days when it's just not necessary for the problem that you're trying to solve for. You can do it a lot easier, simpler, faster. So there's that piece. The next one I am really, really passionate about, and this is why I wrote it down. Building a scalable data culture. So data culture, I think, is something we often forget, and we've spoken about it a few times though, you know, making sure the people that are interfacing with the data know the importance of it. But for me, it's really like leveraging the masses here. If we make interfacing with data and we make tools that are not super complicated to use, we all of a sudden take a lot of pressure off of those few key resources we have that can do advanced data analytics, right? Your data scientists. For example, like we're a global team, we have 3. So that's a really important one. Automating, upskilling, phased approach, making sure we have this mindset where, you know, data-driven decision-making is a part of everyone's days, and we're all going to interface with the tools that we're provided to do our bit in our organisations, not just rely on the few core people that might have a degree in it. It's not necessary. So yeah, they're the two things. Make sure what you do has purpose, it aligns with value to the business and not taking on everything, and then adopting and scaling to the broader workforce. So you can leverage, I'm sure, the thousands of people you have working for you.
I've got another bit when you just think about the practical element. So our defect management team that are looking at difficult to solve defects, repeat defects, not the ones that happen then and there and you're trying to protect the operation. They actually coincide with some avionics engineers and data experts as such. They're actually in a little team together. So what we're bringing is the practical with also the research. So they're starting to see something trending. They're then talking to the line engineer with years of experience going, is that normal? Why would that be happening? Oh, that system's stable. That'd be normal. Don't worry about researching it. Or the other way, what is the right way to troubleshoot something? And then they put the task in. So you've got the data analytic professional engineers seeing the deviation. We then start a really targeted troubleshooting environment and the two of them working together. And then after that troubleshooting's been done, we look at that same system again to see if there's been a change in state. So it's actually a loop as well. But bringing the two different knowledge bases in together is really important. Not in isolation. There's too many professional people with great experience that's real. And if you just bring in complete data people, they're just looking at it with not understanding why. Bring those two elements together.
That leads nicely on to my next question around what do reliability, asset engineers, maintenance engineers, what are the skills they need now moving into this new era of AI and advanced data analytics?
All the things that I never grew up with, so Python, SQL, ability to code, that's a really big thing, So when we get some of the grads and the people that came into the team, it's amazing how quickly they can see the data and manipulate the data on a platform. Traditionally, we used to have people come in and they'd be on a 6 months program and they'd take 3 months to get data access and then try and build something. We're fortunate enough now to have a platform that as you're getting new people in, they're building on the same and it's got all the training elements in, so it accelerates that program. But all the professional engineers, we're struggling to log in. It's and the hands-on engineers, that's just not what we do. We get in there, it's too complicated, it's there. What we want is a simple output that we can then go, okay, that's doing this particular direction. I think this is the area we need to troubleshoot. So I go back, it's a combination of it all, but you definitely need the manipulation of data skills now, which is what's being trained that we didn't have. The other thing is, in training for the practical engineers, is actually starting to think about troubleshooting differently. That's another skill. So quite often we train how a system works, but we actually aren't training how to troubleshoot effectively in our program. What are new ways of using systems and tools that can do it? So I spoke about an example is a pressurization on an aircraft. You have a pressurization leak, happens in the air, you pressurize inside, makes a little noise or something as one of the seals is worn. You get back on the ground, the only way you can traditionally do that is to turn around and pressurize the aircraft you're sitting inside, which is not really great for your ears. It's actually you're sitting inside, expanding the aircraft. Using new tools, we went to Boeing Charlie Works and we did some stuff there. They actually use electronic sensor with sound, and you're actually putting the transmitter inside the sealed area and then using a wand outside and detecting it. So starting to use new tools that are available and thinking about things differently on both aspects, data plus an interfacing, and then using all that to actually share that information. So distributing the information across. So we're all gaining from that knowledge.
Yeah, I call them the unicorns, really, in the maintenance and data world. It's becoming increasingly important that we have people that are multi-skilled. And I normally break it down into 3 categories. There's the technical skills that David touched on. They can code. SQL, Python, R, whatever it may be. Visualizations, Power BI, all of that. Technical skills in the data space. Then we have analytical skills. Really, really important. They need to appreciate reliability and the things that we do. Root cause analysis, failure modes, effects cause analysis, what is MTBF, what is MTTR. They need to actually understand these things and why they're important to organisations. And then lastly, data domain expertise. How to use SAP. What the fields of SAP mean. If you're using an APM solution of some sort, there's various companies. How does that actually work? What is the data that's available in there? What are people using it for? We need our data people to have all of these sorts of skills because we need to be dynamic. And it's really, really slow sometimes when you have to have your really experienced, engineers in the field sitting there trying to translate to a data scientist that has no clue, what this equipment even is, what they need to do with the data. It's really, really hard. So what we're trying to do now is take people with those skills, reliability engineers that have an interest in data, and upskilling them. They become the translators for us. So they don't necessarily have to be the ones that are doing all of the complex data analysis, the scientists, but it's really important to have them be able to translate what the business actually needs into data language. And I'm not talking language in terms of code. I'm talking, just being able to tell a data scientist what they need to do. So we're creating more of those people, and they become super, super powerful to increase, the speed at which you can actually execute things in your businesses. So if you're not already doing that, definitely worth thinking about how you can upskill people that are interested.
Are you creating them or just finding them? Because I think there's a natural evolution of people that want to fix things will bubble up. They want to use new things. It's just identifying and then finding them, really.
We are doing both, and don't get me wrong, I think some people are not impressed with us poaching the scarce reliability engineers to now go and do a master's in data science, but a bit of both. So some of those people that are super into the data world, you'll find them from time to time, they'll be self-taught. They'll know how to code, they would have done it themselves. They do it when they go home, they do it on weekends, they do things, home improvements, programming their own home control systems and all of that. When you find those people, it's really, really good. They find this super, super interesting. They become really powerful. But it's also important to make sure it's more of a formalised development pathway for people too. Because I think quite often we do have silos in these two worlds, and by bringing them back together through a formalised approach and actually advertising that through businesses is going to be super critical moving into the future. So yeah, a bit of both. When they come organically, it's very exciting. But yes.
Great, thank you. I'm going to open up to our audience. Does anyone have a question for our panel? Wonderful.
Thank you. Hello, Rodolfo from Alcoa. In my business there, the challenge I have, it's a lot about having access to the data. So most of the time, because it sits with IT world, they don't give us access to the raw data. So usually what I have to do is like export things to Excel, create my own databases, and then develop my dashboards or whatever analysis I have to do. How is it in your organization? Is it getting close to deliver more data to end users so they can actually manipulate the data?
That is our goal. That is what we try to do. So that's an excellent question, and the way that we deal with it at the moment. Also agree with IT in your situation too. We don't necessarily like giving people access to raw data, because data can be manipulated in whatever way you want to tell whatever story you want, right? And everyone will come up with a different answer. But what we do instead is we create conformed data tables and put them back into Snowflake for accessibility too. So we do all the cleaning for the people, so that you don't have to go in and apply all your own filters and do all of these things, because guaranteed your number that you spit out will be different to ours. So first of all, we conform the data. Then we have standards that actually tell us how we calculate things, and we go ahead and we perform those calculations, and we create what we call fact tables, and we put those in Snowflake too. And that's what we give people access to. So a reliability engineer wants to be able to go and see, all of the historical scheduled equipment downtime on a particular piece of equipment. It's cleansed, and it's been calculated according to our standards. And they can go and access that. We'll give everyone access to that in Snowflake. Now, if you're not savvy with interfacing with data lakes, which some people aren't, and being able to extract that information out, we actually have put it in a Power BI format, and we call it a workbench. And every single piece of data that we have conformed in the maintenance world is accessible through that workbench. So all you need to be able to do is open up Power BI, put on a few filters, and export to Excel. It's a lot of work to manage that. That's what our team does at the moment. But it's all about empowering people that actually make decisions on a day-to-day basis with the right information to do so. Accurate information, cleansed information. That is our goal. We don't want to harbour this and become some sort of bottleneck. We want everyone to be able to use and have access to what we can see. Helps us.
I yell at them. I get really disappointed. We're not at that aspirational world. I'm really sick of some of the bottleneck that IT provide, and it's really difficult. one of the main information system, they're running extracts every 15 minutes out, and people are building then Excel things out of it, which is just so stupid. And then we find out they built a replica database with a 1-second refresh rate, but they said, no, you can't use it in operations because we don't want to support in case it goes down and you build something out of it. So they keep us in an extract process of 15 minutes instead of supporting that. So every time I get near them, I just express my displeasure in certain ways, and I just, and we're trying to escalate. And bizarrely, the CIO the other day, she was in a room with us, and I grabbed her and said, "Are you aware of this?" She straight away just started talking. And she goes, "No." So we're meeting for coffee next week, and I think she'll get a view of the world that comes from my world.
Good luck to her. I will just disclaim, we are not part of technology, our team. We're a maintenance data team, and that's why we do it, right? So technology in our company, they do all of the ingestion from the interface, so your fleet management systems, SAP, all of that, into the raw data tables, and then we take it from there because we're the domain experts. And there's no way that our technology teams would actually be able to make decisions regarding the data that align with the broader community, maintenance community, because they just don't know. They don't know what to do with it. And that's exactly what they do. Then they lock it down because they're worried about people then coming to them and asking, "Oh, you broke this, my dashboard's broken and this and that, the data's incorrect." They don't know how to fix it. So we step in there in between the end user and technology to make sure that the data is useful. Yeah.
We want two of you. Yeah, that's right. Shereya?
Yeah, question over here.
So we understand the importance of data quality and maintaining that data quality. But one of the biggest challenges we have, and I run an asset management practice here for Accenture in Australia and global, and it's maintaining our data governance. Can you tell us a little bit about data governance and how you're managing that quality?
You can go with the professional team first.
Well, yes. Look, it's hard. It's a lot of work. And the amount of work that goes into governing is underestimated, completely underestimated, and not valued at all. It's not seen as value adding, right? So it's a massive challenge for us, massive. We see a lot of things that are put out across the business that are definitely incorrect because governance systems either don't exist or have fallen over. And it is disappointing. But again, we just make sure that from our perspective, with what we can control, that the things that we set up are governed as well as possible against standards that we set. So that's what I would say is super important, right? Like, so to govern anything, you have to have a standard in place. And then you need to make sure that you assure against that standard. So governance and assurance standard, check that you're actually adhering to that. So if we had more people, we would definitely do a better job of it. We don't let it slide, but it is really hard. It genuinely is hard. So, no, we're shared challenge.
Does anyone remember the optical image of where it's got 2 prongs coming out or 3 prongs coming out? And you look at it, and it depends on which way you look at it, it becomes that.
Is the blue dress gold dress?
Yeah, it's so one of those things. We actually are all looking at the data, but we're interpreting it different ways. And that's also a problem. So we've tried to, at times, have an RMA, a reason that figure is coming out and the explanation behind it, but then people still misinterpret it. And I think the only way we can do it is actually doing a reset. And we've been tasked with that, so we've got lots of data sources. And the new manager that's come in just said, "I don't like it. I want you guys to go and look at the data across the business. How do you improve digitisation? And then how do you bring a team together that owns this problem to be a better data-driven business?" So how do we get to a team like this that's actually not in each business unit? Stop the business units fighting between themselves and coming up with their own data. Come up with that. And I think that's really the end goal because more and more people are using data. There's more accessibility to the tools that use data. If you can't get the data, we come up with a different extract that is not clean in some way, and it's a problem. Yeah. It's an executive leadership decision to change the way you change that business, and actually put value in data and digitisation. That's an important part. Otherwise, no one's got capacity. We'll just keep doing what we do.
Yeah. I will say too, this comes back to single point of accountability has been really powerful for us as well. So when it comes to actually governing something, making sure that you know who is accountable for that. You've got data domain owners, you've got data stewards, they're approving access, they're doing the regular governance audit checks. That's really, really important if you don't have that established, to make sure that there are people in the business who know that is their job, to make sure that the data is governed. Yep.
This is probably a good follow-up question, our Pat Gethin Field reports. I guess, do you feed into a bigger enterprise-wide data strategy? And I guess what you just said, maybe not, but is there a place for that, or is that just nirvana sort of in BHP? And
Do we have one? Yes. Would I consider it a data strategy? Probably not. I think we're still quite immature in that space, but don't let that stop you though. If your broader organisation does not have a data strategy, whatever domain you work in, make your own. That's what we're doing at the moment. In the absence of the broader business having one, we're hoping we can, do a pilot, if you like, and influence that way to say this is the power of actually having a data strategy. We've broken that down into a few steps, and if you want to know more about it too, I can tell you about how we're trying to go about it at the moment. But one of the really key parts of that data strategy is a roadmap too. So being able to anticipate what we need to be doing now in terms of collecting data, cleaning data, transforming data, the whole, extract, transform, load process to be able to enable us in the future. So do we have a data strategy? Yes. Are we improving our own data strategy? Yes. Regardless of that one.
For us, we're engineering. We're one element of the business. There's a data strategy that's sitting in the loyalty environment. There's a data strategy sitting in the commercial environment and sales, and they know what they want to do. They're forging ahead. Engineering's a cost base, so they don't actually want to put money into aligning and helping us that much, which is really silly, because if you save $1, that's $1 in the business. A lot of the time when you have a new customer, by the time you go through all the costs of getting that customer on board, you might get 5 cents, 10 cents. So there's got to be some smarts going back in. And I just feel because we're a cost base, we tend to be the poor cousin. We've actually got BCG in the business at the moment. They've come in selling AI 30, so using artificial intelligence 30. But what they've recognised is unless we get the fundamentals right, it's ridiculous. You've still got the same problem. So they're starting to get in there. So what we're using is we're using those nice shiny brochures that they're building and going, how do we fix the data strategy, all the tools we need, giving them that, and hopefully they'll actually help fix some of the problems that we have. And bizarrely, the data team and data analytics that were never working with engineering have all of a sudden, because BCG's in the building, have come across and went, oh, maybe we should be helping you, because they're doing what our jobs are. So maybe if you can embarrass some other people in the business as well, that might be helpful. It's not a data strategy, it's an embarrassment strategy.
I'll just say too, for organisations that are mature in this space, their business strategy is their data strategy. They're one and the same. And that's ideally where I'd like us to aspire to get to as well, but we're definitely still in the boat of, data strategy supports business strategy. But if you go and read about this or do, a course on data analytics or data strategy, they should be one and the same. And that is that, data drives every decision in your business, and subsequently business strategy is data strategy.
One last question. What is one thing that we can do right now to improve the data quality in organisations? And you have 30 seconds. 30 seconds. On the dot.
That's hard. That's really hard.
Pass.
I think we've attempted to do that, and by making it easier for the people to put the data in. That's an important part. Help codify, use the tools you can that makes it easy to help you work through the process.
Yeah, that's exactly mine too. Focus on that back end, which is the interface with where you record all of your data. Drop downs, simple. Take the thinking away from it as much as you can, and the uplift that you'll have in data quality will be huge.
Great. Thank you so much, panellists. Can we give a round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you very much, panel. That's been fantastic. And look, this afternoon there's with the app, please fill in the app for the details on it. Great, thank you. And I think it's afternoon tea.